Welcome into your betting preview for this week's CJ Cup. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there. Andy Lack. Andy, 78 golfers. No cut, but back on Eastern time. So this is much more into the normal viewing window that we would be expecting on the PGA Tour.
Right. Event of the fall swing, would you say? Probably. I mean, we've got 15 of the top 20 players in the world here.
Yeah, that's fair. And we're going to a golf course that's very unique that we have seen one time. Right. So that's exciting as well. Yeah, I think this is clearly the A+ event of the fall.
I'd agree. I actually like the Houston golf course that we have coming up in a couple weeks as well. That's a Tom Doak design, so I'm excited for that as well. But this is an awesome golf course, Rick. And I wrote about this a lot in the Monday preview that I did on RickRunGood.com. But it's very seldom that we get to see golf courses on the PGA Tour that play really firm and fast, right? It's a lot of soft, very green target golf courses on the PGA Tour. And Congaree is different than that. Congaree is closer to an ocean course or a Southern Hills where there's a ton of short grass around the greens. And once that ball gets rolling, it's hard to figure out when it's going to stop.
Without, I mean, we could go on the golf course tangent if we want, but the idea that we've seen this golf course once, the Palmetto Championship, which was held in June of 2021, now in October date, Andy, I want it to be firm and fast. I think everybody does. How likely do you think it's firm and fast this week in October?
Well, I would just say based on the climate, it's probably not going to be maybe as firm as fast as what we saw at the Palmetto. The Palmetto, I believe, was in the middle of the summer, and this is kind of a broad generalization, but golf courses, it's a lot easier for golf courses to be firm and fast during the summer because you get more hours of sunlight, right? Essentially, right? And so some of the times when we've seen these Southeastern courses in the fall, it's a rainy season in the fall, right? Remember how soft the November Masters played? It's a little bit harder to get these golf courses fiery, but I've been monitoring the weather this week, Rick, and I'll write about this a little bit more in my Wednesday article too, but it's not like the area has gotten a ton of rain or anything like that, or we're going to see a ton of rain tournament week. So I still expect this to be like a pretty tough test.
All right. Well, pretty tough test for the world's best. Here is the odds grid via Odds Checker, which allows you to kind of shop these numbers across the board. So the two favorites, Rory McIlroy plus 700, Jon Rahm plus 950. And then we get to only two other golfers sub 20-1. That's Scotty Scheffler as long as 12-1, Justin Thomas at 16. Depending on where you were shopping, because I know Max Homa, and you're still seeing that, Max Homa at DraftKings is 16-1, which is the same odds as Justin Thomas over there, as long as 31-1. So we can kind of maybe loop him into the top of the board if DraftKings is the only place that you have access to bet that.
Right. And I would encourage everyone to shop around because you're seeing a fair amount of discrepancies this week. One guy that you're not seeing a ton of discrepancy with, that it seems like the books seem to agree pretty wholeheartedly that he deserves to be in that 13-16-1 range and is the player that I believe will win this tournament, is Justin Thomas. And it's hard to believe, Rick, that over the past 24 months, JT's only two wins have come at the Players and PGA Championship. This is a guy that early on in his career made a living off of beating up weaker fields in golf's quote unquote off season. 9 of his 15 PGA Tour wins have come between the months of September and February. So I just think JT is due for one of those strong fall swing performances, and both of his PGA Championship wins, Rick, wide open, driver heavy golf courses with a ton of short grass. Quail Hollow was even Tom Fazio redesign as well. So I think that this is any type of golf course where you have to be creative with your short game, you've got some room to operate off the tee, and you need to be a good long iron player. I'm playing JT there 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, you kind of already alluded to the Southern Hills connection. Obviously, JT getting it done at Southern Hills earlier this year. We'll go a little bit Further, before we do, JT's won this event twice. Obviously not at this golf course, but worth noting when you get him in a 4-round, no cut event with 78 golfers. This time of year, he's certainly capable of thriving. As we enter into the 20s, this is where you get Sung J M, Matt Fitzpatrick, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland, basically everybody else. And you can extend that to Cam Young and Jordan Spieth and even Tom Kim, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Shane Lowry. I mean, literally, depending on where you're looking, the next 10 or 12 guys might be in this 22 to 32 range.
Right. And I actually wanted to, because there are a ton of great names in here. One question I wanted to ask you that I've been battling with a little bit myself this week is, how much are you factoring in the travel of those who played in Tokyo last week? Because I tend to underrate that stuff, but like Tokyo to the West Coast, doable. Tokyo to the East Coast is like bad. Like that is a tough trip.
It is. I also generally think these guys who, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of miles they rack up every year, are much better at traveling than the average person, right? Like if I do a 6-hour trip from the West Coast to the East Coast, like I'm cooked for 3 days. These guys are much more in tune with their body, things that help them get through it, things that help them do not. So I also tend to not care as much as I think most people want to care about this.
Right. Okay. So there are 3 players in that range that all played in the Zozo that I've been having a little bit of trouble with figuring out which one I like the best of this group of Hovland, Cameron Young, and Morikawa. And I guess we can throw Tom Kim in there as well. Who are you most inclined to roll with this week?
I think it's Tom Kim, believe it or not. So
Interesting.
yeah, I worry a hair about Cam Young. Like, I think you're going to get the upside, but I think you're going to get some down weeks. He has not been as good recently as he was most of last year. Again, we're splitting hairs. Morikawa is probably up there as well. I'm a believer that we are going to get kind of a massive year from him. He is still an elite iron player, and he putts in a way that wins trophies. So I'm excited about that. But let's be real. Like, Tom Kim's rolling, and Tom Kim is going to play out of the fairway. If we get firm and fast stuff, which I hope that we get, he is likely not as going to be as behind the 8 ball with the lack of driving distance. And then like the rest of his game, it's unbelievable. We don't have the numbers from the Zozo because they don't send the lasers or the cameras over there, but he is gaining basically a stroke or more per round on approach dating back to the 3M Open. His putter can get absolutely scorching. I mean, the guy is so incredibly solid right now. And what we've also learned is guys kind of on heaters have been staying on heaters, Andy, right? Like they've just been living in the moment seemingly much more frequently as of late. So I'm a really big believer in Tom Kim, and I like the number here.
Okay, interesting. I thought you were going to go with Hovland here, who I have some interest in myself as well. I would actually probably lean Cam Young in this spot of those 4 guys, solely based on the reason, I brought up Southern Hills already too. He finished 3rd there and had a legitimate chance to win down the stretch. I look at some of the other courses that Cameron Young has had a ton of success at. How about St. Andrews? That's another driver heavy course that gives you a ton of room to operate off the tee, has these big, giant, interesting, nuanced green complexes. But the fact that he is such a powerful driver, and this is a driver heavy course, allows him to have just such a huge advantage on some of the second shots already, where he can carry a lot of these bunkers and put himself in positions where some of these green complexes, I believe, are going to be pretty tough to approach with long iron. So I really do think Cam Young has a built-in advantage this week. And then Hovland, Hovland of that group probably looked the best at the Zozo. He was never really able to get it going on Sunday in that final round. He rebounded a little bit on the back 9, but another golf course that's interesting that I was thinking about a lot, where Morikawa actually won and Hovland finished 2nd, was the Concession. Remember that WGC course that we saw about a year and a half ago, right? Or 2 years ago now, where you've got, again, wide open, expansive fairways, southeastern slick Bermuda grass greens, these big, deep bunkers and interesting nuanced green complexes, ton of short grass everywhere. Hovland finished second there. So I would say for me, it's probably Young and Hovland that I prefer the most.
That next range where you get into the 30s with Shane Lowry and even to the 40s with Hideki and Aaron Wise and some of these other guys. Terrell Hatton is here, Andy, and the reason I point him out is for a couple of reasons. He's got a handful of top 10s in his last 5 starts. That's worldwide. Had a really ugly quad, made a couple of big numbers last week, but made a bunch of birdies as well. The 1 year of history that we have at Congaree, Hatton finished runner up. It was a big like 6 or 7 way tie for second behind Garrick Higo. How much are you giving credence to the guys that did indeed play this event and play it well last June?
Some. I think Hatton is an interesting case because he should have won that tournament if he was even just a neutral putter, right? And that needs to count for something. That is clear. This is clearly a golf course that fits Hatton's eye off the tee, and we've seen him perform quite well on firm Bermuda courses before. He's got a first and second at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, which is Bermuda, very firm, ton of long irons. So, I worry about the fact that it seems like Hatton, at least in the past 12 to 16 months, hasn't really been able to find his footing on U.S. soil. But I look back at the courses that he's played so well at in the U.S., and it's these types of courses. So I certainly have interest in Hatton, at the very least, in like a matchup guy or in the finishing position markets or in DraftKings.
The 5 golfers who are in this field this year who finished inside the top 20 at the Palmetto Championship are Terrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ches Reavie, Harris English, and Seamus Power. Those are the 5 that are playing this week that had success in 2021. Okay, who else, Andy? Is there anybody? I mean, because we're kind of starting, this is always the big question. When you get as many top players as we have this week, you start to wonder where you draw the line on who can actually win this golf tournament. Billy Horschel's 50-1. Keegan Bradley just won last week at 60, along with Taylor Montgomery. Like, where are we drawing the line here?
Probably Aaron Wise, to be honest with you. And we would be remiss not to mention kind of our shared favorite player. The Rick and Andy Venn diagram overlaps when we get to Aaron Wise. And I look at a player that has a pretty immaculate resume at a course like Quail Hollow, right? He's got a 9th, a 2nd, and an 18th there. That's another Tom Fazio course with slick Bermuda greens that plays really firm, is long, and is driver heavy. Aaron Wise was great there. You want to talk some more Tom Fazio? How about a 5th last year at the Summit Club, right? That's another wide open Tom Fazio course. Ocean course. Aaron Wise was top 20 at the Ocean course too. Another South Carolina firm golf course with these vast wide open fairways and expansive sandy waste areas and a ton of short grass around the greens. I just think this golf course fits his eye. It's the type of golf course that should fit his eye very well. I know the major concern that you're probably looking at on RickRunGood.com is you could see that his approach play was quite poor in his last start at the Shriners, but scroll down a little bit further and look at the weeks after he's had a bad approach week.
Yeah.
Pretty damn good. He usually rebounds pretty damn well after a bad approach week.
Yeah, he basically never has back-to-back losing weeks, or at least hasn't in like the last 18 months.
Exactly. So I'm there, 66-1.
This will be a good segue into matchups, because the other guy that you have to love what you see from the Emiliano Grillo stat profile and the results that he's been putting up, but to ask him to beat out 15 of the top 20 players in the world and in a no-cut event, I think that's a big ask. So that's where I kind of start to look at some of these matchups and see where I can find access to Grillo. Now, DraftKings has him even money to Maverick McNeely's -120. That's probably the favorite Grillo matchup that I saw, but does anything kind of stick out to you as I scroll through this matchup board?
Well, I fade him every week and it hasn't been working out well for me, but what do we do with Taylor Montgomery, Rick, who's gained 22 strokes putting in his last 3 starts and is a negative approach player?
Yeah, he might just be like the new Denny McCarthy, Andy. What if he's just like the world's best putter?
This is way above a Denny pace, though,
Yeah,
right? Like
this is like 4.812. This is like double a Denny pace.
I'd be curious to see if there's any golfer in the database who's gained over 5 strokes putting in 4 starts in a row. Seriously, I'd be surprised if somebody has done that before.
+5 in 4 straight. I'll look it up.
Okay.
+5 in 4 straight. Yeah, I mean, this is such a tough stat profile because you're 100% right. He is either the best putter on the planet by a factor of 2, or this is coming to an end at some point. And that is the latter is much more likely. What I wish we had, though, because when you look at straight results, it's 6 straight top 15 finishes, 7 straight going back to the Corn Ferry. I wish we kind of had more information about how he played kind of down the stretch, but I agree. He is such a fast, whether you're going to bet him or not, whether you're going to play him on DraftKings or not, like just tracking what Taylor Montgomery does for the next couple of months is like one of my top priorities.
Right. And I dug into it a little bit, Rick. We don't have like true strokes gained from it, but it's not like I'm sitting here saying he's a poor ball striker. On the PGA Tour so far, in a very limited sample size, he has not been a great ball striker, but you do not accumulate those results on the Corn Ferry Tour without being at least, at the very least, an above average ball striker. So I saw him matched up against Wise. I would play Wise against most people this week, but that was probably the number one matchup that stood out to me the most.
Yeah, both are -110 at DraftKings. Here's one, and these are two guys we haven't talked about. I want to get your thoughts on this. Matt Fitzpatrick is +105 to Scotty Scheffler's -130. Scotty Scheffler technically could lose his spot as the number 1 player in the world this week. Did you know that? If Rory wins or finishes second, I believe.
Right. I did know that. Yeah. Yeah.
It is clear that while Scotty, so both of these things can be true. Scotty's been awesome. Scotty has also not putted nearly as well as he was earlier in 2022. And that shouldn't be a surprise, right? He routed off 4 wins in however many starts. It was something was going to regress. He wasn't going to win 40% of his starts moving forward. How concerned are you about this stat profile? And then I can also kind of, as we're talking about, I can bring up Fitzpatrick's as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, he lost the putter towards the end of the season. And Rick, as you just mentioned, like it was a somewhat unsustainable pace in terms of winning, right? After Scheffler won the Masters, I did not expect him to play so well over the course of the rest of the season. I mean, he lost in a playoff at Colonial. He almost won the U.S. Open too, right? So Scheffler, he has sustained it over a long enough period of time now where we can't just say it's a heater anymore. This guy is a bona fide top 5 player in the world. With that being said, I do not think he's going to win 4 times this next year. I actually would not be surprised if he doesn't win more than once, right? So if you give me a matchup with Fitzpatrick, I'm probably leaning Fitzpatrick just because he's another guy who's played this course before and has finished. I think he played well. I think he finished top 10 too. So I'd probably lean Fitzpatrick, but long-term concerns about Scheffler, I wouldn't sound the alarm bells.
Yeah, it was a T10 for Fitzpatrick at Congaree last year. I just love the well-rounded, and that's not to say Scotty Scheffler is not well-rounded either. Clearly he is, but like the well-rounded nature of Fitzpatrick, you know, this is not a links style golf course, Andy, right? But I think it's going to give you options. I think it's going to reward creativity a little bit. You know, I think that a guy like Fitzpatrick certainly fits the mold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's look at some of the other. I'm going to keep saying Southern Hills, right? This is another guy that played great at Southern Hills. Bay Hill, too, another Bermuda course where you've got a ton of long irons in your hand and short game really matters, too. So these are the types of golf courses that you think are going to hold Fitzpatrick's attention. You probably don't want him on courses where you need to get to 25 under. And I think that this is a course that's going to fall right into that Fitzpatrick 10 to 14 under range.
We've got to talk about props, and we have to get back on track with our one and done selections because we did not make one and done selections this week, but that's okay because neither of us made them. So it's all square, all good. We are going to do that, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear about Andy's podcast. Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. And we're back. Okay, the props, they just dropped, like literally while we were recording this, Andy, on PrizePicks. So you can go to the link in the description. You can use the code Rick. You can get yourself a $100 deposit match at PrizePicks. They've got birdies are better matchups, greens and regulation, fairways hit, and strokes. Now we'll start with the strokes because they've got the big boys, JT, Scotty, Rahm, and Rory all at 65.5. The highest available props appear to be Gary Woodland's 69. But you can get some guys at 68.5. What do we think the scoring average could be? Because then really we're taking and looking at the top, 20 or so options here.
I think it's probably going to be between half a stroke under par to about a stroke and a quarter under par. Does that sound right? I don't have the Palmetto numbers up in front of me, but just at kind of a macro level bird's eye view, these feel a little bit low to me, Rick, and I would probably look at a player like Jason Day and say, man, if Jason Day shoots 2 under, that's a pretty darn good round around Congaree.
Yeah, so let's do the math here. So Jason Day at 68, which this is a par 71. So 2 under is more than his prop.
Right.
So if we think that, let's say we think this plays a half stroke under par. So that would be 70.5. He would have to gain basically 2.5 strokes, right? Am I doing this right? To beat you on that. So how often does Jason Day gain 2.5 strokes to the field? Well, I can pull him up here and we can just look at this. Last 100 rounds, he gains 2 or more 31% of the time, and 3 or more 19% of the time. So that's a pretty sizable ask for Jason Day. And even if you go shorter term instead of 100 rounds, I bet you, it's not. I mean, his +3 is better, but his +2 is basically the same. So that's a pretty sizable ask for Jason Day in his current form to gain 2.5 strokes on the field.
Right. And I mean, that's an excellent way of looking at it too. I love that tool that you have there where it's basically like an upside measuring stick, right? Like you're basically seeing, okay, what is this guy's ceiling? What is this guy's floor? Which I think could be really helpful in PrizePicks. So yeah, I would think just kind of at a macro level, Rick, they feel a touch low to me with the par 71. So I would probably look to pick on guys like Jason Day, and there are a few others in there. Keegan coming off a win maybe, but I'd probably go, if we're talking strokes, I'd probably go overs, Rick.
Yeah, so Jason Day, Keegan Bradley, both at 68 for round 1. Just kind of macro, how do we feel about Ricky here? Because he's 68.5. So you get the hook if you wanted to go under this. Are you a buyer in what Ricky's been doing kind of now back with Butch? He's got a new voice on the bag. We're seeing at least a lot better play in his last couple of starts.
I am. Tentatively, yes. It seems still like it's been a little bit of a flip-floppy thing with Ricky so far, right? Like he finishes 6 at the Fortinet, and then everybody hops on him for the Shriners, and he misses the cut, and then everybody hops back off, and he almost wins the Zozo. I'm curious to see, he didn't actually, Rick, get the price increase that I was kind of expecting. I think he's pretty reasonably priced in DraftKings and in the betting markets. So he's a guy that I definitely do have some interest in, but I would probably need to say that I need to see it over a little bit larger of a sample size and against some stronger competition before I make this guy a mainstay on my betting card every week.
Worth noting, if we loop this conversation back to another Fazio that you mentioned earlier, Summit Club, that is, which was this event last year, is where Ricky held the 54-hole lead, battled with Rory McIlroy down the stretch. Rory eventually nabbed him, but maybe this is a chance for him to have 2 good starts in a row instead of doing the flip-flop opportunity.
Right. I believe he's won at Quail too. I could be wrong about that, but I think he's won at Quail Hollow.
Yeah, he has. That was in, let's see, 2013.
Wow,
2012.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I would have been like, oh, that was like definitely 2016 or definitely 2017. I forgot Ricky's been around. Ricky's making his 300th career start this week. Justin Thomas making his 200th. And it's like jarring to me to think that Ricky is actually like old, like, you know what I mean? Like, I always think Ricky's still 19 years old.
Rick, did you know that in 2014, Ricky finished top 5 in all 4 majors?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. A feat that very few people have been able to accomplish
ever in the history of golf, right? I mean, you look at even somebody like Rory and Zalatoris, who felt like they were in the mix at every single major this year, and they're still not finishing top 5 at all 4 of them. So anyway, it's good to see him playing well again. I think golf is in a better spot when Ricky's playing well.
Yeah, so we're leaning some of the overs on PrizePicks. If you're feeling frisky on Ricky, his number for round 1 is 68.5. I'll also take this opportunity because it is the first day of the NBA season to shamelessly plug rungoodprops.com, which is literally just a dashboard that pulls over all the sports props and allows you to see what the real probability is because it compares it to DraftKings. So you can get Tobias Harris over 1.5 threes, Klay Thompson over 2.5 threes. Those are both significant favorites compared to kind of just the even money type of props that you're normally seeing on PrizePicks. Final thing to do here, Andy, and we whiffed out on it last week, but it is our one and done selection. So as we stand here, I'm smoking you. I literally have 3 times as much money as you do. So this is probably an insurmountable lead. If you just want to call this right now, I'll accept and we can just move on and save the time every single week. What do you think?
Long season ahead of us, buddy, but you're right. It has been a very slow start for me. I think I went Pendrith, Henley, Wise, and none of those guys have finished inside the top 50. So yeah, it's a rough start, but we're looking to get back on the wagon again this week.
For those who are only listening, I'm obviously being facetious. I have $100,000 in 3 events and Andy has 33,000. So, literally like a T30 would probably close the gap. Maybe even worse than that, this week at a CJ Cup. So, a lot of options, right? You've got a lot of great players, but that always kind of creates a situation where you're like, should I save them? I think the winner share is going to be, I think it's 1.98. So it's pretty significant. Like, what are we doing, or what are some reasonable options for one and done this week?
You know, I think that you're probably not going to want to play a big gun. Right? Like, I think if you're thinking about rolling out Rory or JT or Rahm or Scheffler, I would exercise a little bit of caution because, you know, you want to have some of those guys at your disposal for the majors. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I feel pretty damn comfortable rolling out a Hovland here or a Cameron Young or Sam Burns. I mean, this purse is big enough where I believe that those types of players are justified. Just to segue into who I'm going to go with this week, I'm going to roll with Shane Lowry. I think this is an okay spot to utilize Shane Lowry here. He's in that kind of sweet spot of the betting market between like 25 and 35 to 1. I really like this golf course for him. I bet him to win outright. So I feel pretty comfortable with Lowry as a selection here.
I have so much to say. So I'm so happy about that. So a couple of things. Armina and I, we were doing our little pre-production meeting and we were going through the cheat sheet or the spreadsheet. And she said, who are you going to pick? And I told her who I'm going to pick. And she said, who is Andy going to pick? And she said it jokingly. And I said, I bet you he picked Shane Lowry. So she punched in Shane Lowry ? Into the spreadsheet. And now we can remove that question mark because I knew you were going to go with Shane Lowry, which I like. I think it's a good play.
Well, if you read the Monday article, he was number one in my model. You know, he was ahead of, he was even ahead of Rory and JT. So yeah, I like this spot a lot for Shane Lowry. And I feel like even Rick, if we're projecting this out to bigger contests, I do not believe that he will be super highly owned in the run and done either.
The other situation that we have that someone correctly corrected me on last week is it's not going to matter for this week, but whoever is in the lead needs to go first, Andy, because if not, the person who is in first could just pick the same golfer.
You're right. You're right. Sorry for jumping the gun early there. I was so excited about Shane.
No, as you should be. And I was excited that you picked Shane as well. I am in agreement that I probably do not want to burn a big boy. I think that there are some guys, even like who are a little bit further down the board, like a Jordan Spieth, who like just get me Spieth in Texas or get me Spieth at Augusta or get me Spieth at an open. Like I got a lot of opportunities for Jordan Spieth down the stretch, even though I do like the way he sets up for this. I kind of narrowed it down to two. Matt Fitzpatrick, who I just love the well-rounded nature you kind of alluded to. If this thing is 10 to 14 under par, awesome. But the golfer that I've selected, which is a little bit of a reach for me, is Terrell Hatton. And I just, with the 1 year of history, the 11 strokes ball striking, the low-key better recent form than I think it actually appears, I'm going with Terrell here. And I don't think I need to save him for anything.
Nope, I agree. Love the pick. And I think that similar to Shane Lowry, he's right in that mix of you feel he can really win this tournament, right? But you don't feel crazy about, oh, I need to save Hatton for this spot. Last question before we get out of here. I'm always curious about what you think. Who do you think is like the chalk one and done option this week? Like who is the guy that leads ownership in run and done?
So I will tell you that I think that it's harder to tell this week than most because of the fact that we don't have like a ton of great course history, right? And we have so many golfers in the field. So I don't think there's going to be a guy who's like 25% owned or something like that.
Right.
I think Victor is going to be pretty popular, and I think Matt Fitzpatrick is going to be pretty popular.
Yeah.
I'm pulling up. Here we go. So as of right now, and again, anybody can go see this on officefootballpool.com. There is not a single golfer site-wide who is being selected over 10%, which is like very, very rare. So the top 5 are Victor at 9.3, Fitz at 7.9, Sung Jae at 6.5, and then both Max Homa and Rory McIlroy at 5.1. But to not see any golfer over 10% right now is, I think, a testament to the depth of the field and the lack of course history.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I was going to say Sung Jae and Sam Burns would be my guesses for 2 options that turn out to be very popular, but that doesn't surprise me at all that no guy is clearing 10%. There's no real way to go wrong in this field.
Sam Burns at 4.6%. He's the 8th highest owned at the moment, but that is only 3% less than the guy in second. So like it's literally just super packed and super tight.
Right. And listen, if you feel really strongly about Rory McIlroy this week, who has absolutely dominated Fazio courses, won at the Summit Club, won twice at Quail Hollow, won at the Ocean Course too, and Rory wins this event. And what does the winner get this week?
1.98, I think.
198. Okay. So what is, and you're thinking to yourself, would I take the 198 or would I want to save him for one of the majors? It's like, I'd take the 1.98 10 times out of
because
10.
the only position that he beats you at a major is by winning. If he finishes second at a major, 1.98 is better.
Right. And he has probably a much higher chance of winning this event than he does, we'll say, the US Open, right? Probably.
I mean, almost certainly, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just the size of field, the 12 guys at the bottom that are not going to contend. You're going to get all the same guys at the U.S. Open, plus maybe Dustin Johnson and Cam Smith,
Cam
right?
Smith and Xander and Cantlay too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. Actually, or maybe I'll just play Rory McIlroy in the run and done.
Right. It's not a bad move, honestly.
All right, Andy, much appreciated as always. Andy is available on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's CJ Cup. Good luck.